Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving into something pretty fundamental today.
Yeah, the big questions, right? What's actually real?
Exactly. What's truly real and maybe what's getting in the way of us seeing it clearly. Our source for this deep dive is an article from the Spiritual Seek. It's called The Pathless Path, Understanding Reality Through 18 Mystical Principles.
It's a really interesting synthesis, pulls from a lot of different wisdom traditions.
It does, and it kind of distills these ideas into things it calls the bedrock of existence, and then, well, the veils that obscure it.
Mm-hmm.
So our mission here is basically to walk you through the core concepts in this article. We'll look at what it labels pillars of ultimate reality and then these veils of illusion.
And it's not about, buying into a specific system wholesale.
No, definitely not. It's more about exploring these frankly fascinating ideas, seeing how they challenge our usual ways of seeing things, might even offer a shortcut to some new insights, perhaps.
It's quite a framework. It takes these ancient ideas, things from Vedanta, Buddhism, Sufism, you name it, and applies them to these enduring questions about being awake, really.
Yeah, and the article structures it pretty clearly, which is helpful. Two main sections. Let's start with the first one, the 9 concepts it calls the pillars of ultimate reality.
Right. These are presented as the foundation, the bedrock of spiritual awakening, as the article puts it.
The things that are fundamentally real.
Yeah. Think eternal, unchanging, independent of circumstances.
Yeah.
That's the vibe the source gives them.
Okay, pillar number 1, pure consciousness.
Hmm?
The article describes this as the eternal formless awareness,
Yeah.
the backdrop to everything. It's not your thoughts or feelings, but this universal knowing.
Like the I am Adem before you add anything else to it.
Exactly, before any qualifications. It illuminates everything but isn't affected by it, like the screen analogy the source uses.
Right. The screen stays untouched, even while the movie of life plays out. The insight being your core identity isn't the changing content, it's the awareness itself.
Okay.
Then pillar 2, the eternal now.
Always a big one in these discussions.
It is. The source argues it's not just a point in time, like 3 p.m. on a Tuesday, but the timeless dimension where all moments appear.
And crucially, it's presented as the only place life actually happens.
Right. So the idea is if you can really inhabit the now.
You escape a lot of the mental noise. Because,
Okay.
This moment, this one right now, is the only one you ever actually exist in. Everything else is either memory or, imagination.
Pillar 3, unconditional love.
And this isn't the sort of conditional feeling we usually think of.
No, the article describes it as more fundamental, like the fabric of existence itself, a force that flows universally.
Without conditions, without expecting return, it's presented as the inherent nature of reality that you discover when sort of your own internal walls come down.
Okay, that leads quite naturally to the next one, pure being.
The fundamental isness. Yeah, the motionless foundation under it all. What's left when you strip away all the mental labels, the concepts?
The source suggests, in moments of deep quiet or presence, when that sense of a separate me gets quiet.
What's revealed?
Just this simple, self-evident state of being. The silent core beneath everything.
Right. Number 5 is universal oneness.
The idea that separation is the illusion.
Exactly. Everything is fundamentally one reality, just expressing itself in countless different forms, like waves on the ocean, that classic analogy.
And the source links recognizing this directly to dissolving that feeling of me versus them, which could obviously change how you interact with everything.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Get inner peace. This one feels maybe more familiar.
Perhaps, but the article frames it specifically. It's presented as the natural state when the mental chatter dies down.
Not something you achieve through effort, necessarily.
More like what's already there underneath, like
Yeah.
the deep ocean being calm even if the surface is choppy. It's your inherent nature, the source suggests, independent of what's happening externally.
Then we get sacred emptiness, or shunyata, from Buddhism.
Yeah, and this is often misunderstood. It's not a nihilistic void.
Right, the source clarifies it's about things being empty of fixed, independent existence. It's the potential.
Exactly. The pregnant space, the source calls it, from which everything arises, full of potential, but empty of inherent thingness. Like silence allows sound, or space holds form. Realizing your own nature is this open potential is seen as liberating.
Okay, number 8, pure awareness.
Seems similar to pure consciousness.
It does, but the article emphasizes the knowing quality here, the luminous presence that illuminates experience but isn't touched by it.
Ah, so like the light itself, rather than just the space, the constant knowing that makes perception possible, even as perceptions change.
Yeah, that seems to be the distinction the source makes. And finally, pillar 9, the divine self, or Atman. This is from Vedanta.
The eternal essence within each of us.
Right, and the source says this essence is identical to the universal consciousness, Brahman.
Which is a profound conclusion. The article frames this as the I am that realization. You discover that what you fundamentally are, that innermost self, is one with the absolute.
And that, the source suggests, is kind of the end of the search, because you realize you were already home.
Exactly. Looking at all 9 of these pillars together, what's striking is how the source consistently describes them. Eternal, unchanging, self-existent, independent of conditions.
Yeah, it's a very different picture from our usual experience, isn't it? Which often feels so temporary and dependent on things going a certain way.
Precisely. And that contrast leads us perfectly into the second part of the article.
The veils of illusion.
Right. If the pillars are the reality, these 9 concepts are what the source identifies as obscuring that reality, creating suffering.
The layers covering it up. Okay, first veil. The ego self.
Our sense of me.
Yeah, the constructed identity. Based on memories, roles, the story we tell ourselves about who we are.
And the article calls it an illusion because it's just, well, a collection of changing thoughts and identifications. It feels like a solid, continuous thing, but the source argues it isn't.
Like the Buddhist idea of Atman, no self.
Exactly. Useful for daily life, maybe, but mistaking it for your true identity is where the suffering comes in, according to this view.
Veil number 2, Maya, the Hindu concept.
Cosmic illusion.
Described as the creative power that makes the one appear as the many. So the world isn't unreal exactly.
No, not in a nothing exists way, but the illusion is mistaking the appearance, this changing, diverse world for the ultimate reality, for Brahman. It's like seeing a mirage. It looks real, but it lacks ultimate substance.
Got it. Veil 3, the stream of thoughts.
Ah, yes, our constant inner monologue.
The article points out how easily we identify with it, believing, I am this thought, I am this feeling.
When, from this perspective, thoughts are just temporary events, impersonal even, like clouds passing in the sky of awareness.
So the problem isn't having thoughts.
No, it's the identification with them. Believing they are you, believing they're absolutely real. That's what obscures the stillness behind them, the source argues.
Veil 4, material possessions.
A big one in modern culture.
Definitely. The article says they create this powerful illusion of security, identity, happiness.
But they're temporary, external. So attachment inevitably leads to suffering, fear of losing them, the burden of them, the endless desire for more.
So true security has to be internal.
That's the suggestion. An inner completeness, independent of external stuff.
Okay, Veil 5, social status. The source calls this a hierarchy of illusion.
Ooh, strong words.
Yeah. It argues that this constant comparison leading external validation, needing approval to feel worthy, it's a major source of suffering.
It feeds the ego, creates these artificial divisions, and hides the inherent dignity the source says everyone already possesses. A hamster wheel, really.
Veil 6, past and future.
Only existing as mental constructs, right? Memory and imagination.
That's the argument. And identifying with them creates what the article calls the prison of psychological time.
Constantly dwelling on regret or anxiety about what's next.
Which stops us from experiencing the only moment that's actually real.
Present, yeah.
Veil 7, fear of death.
The big one. Primal fear.
The article links this directly to identifying only with the temporary body and personality.
Instead of recognizing your nature as potentially this eternal consciousness we talked about with the pillars.
And this fear drives so much anxiety, so much clinging.
Trying to make the impermanent permanent. The source suggests that realizing you are not just the perishable form helps dissolve this fundamental anxiety.
Okay. Veil 8, suffering and attachment, or tanha in Buddhism. These are seen as veils in themselves.
Right. Suffering isn't inherent in life's difficulties, according to this perspective. It arises from our resistance to how things are.
Our resistance to impermanence, our clinging to things we want, pushing away things we don't.
It's exactly. Psychological suffering, the article posits, is basically optional. It's the mind fighting reality. Acceptance is the key here.
And the final veil, number 9, success and failure.
Ah, the judgments we place on outcomes.
The article calls them dualistic concepts, based on external expectations, creating emotional ups and downs.
They distract from inner balance. True success, in this framework, isn't about external achievement.
It's about realizing that inner completeness.
Precisely, which is independent of whether things go well or badly, according to external metrics.
You know, this is where it gets really interesting for me. Seeing how the article takes these common experiences, our sense of self, thoughts, possessions, status, time, fear, ambition, and frames them not just as life stuff, but as active veils.
As things that directly cause suffering and obscure a deeper reality.
Yeah, like forces keeping us plugged into an illusion.
Exactly. And that naturally leads the article to talk about how you navigate this. It introduces a key skill, the great discrimination, viveka.
The ability to tell the difference, right? Between the eternal, unchanging reality pillars.
And the temporary changing illusion veils.
Mm-hmm.
And the source emphasizes this isn't just intellectual, it's an intuitive knowing that develops.
How? By paying attention.
To your own experience, yeah.
Yeah.
As you explore these ideas, you start noticing the patterns. You feel the difference between identifying with, say, anxiety about the future, a veil, versus resting in simple presence, a pillar. The characteristics the article assigns become guides.
And this skill, this viveka, is apparently key to walking what the source calls the pathless path.
Which sounds like a contradiction, but it's a core paradox.
The idea being, we are already what we seek.
That's the essence of it. The journey isn't about getting the pillars. The article says they're already your nature. It's about dismantling the veils.
Removing the illusion, the mistaken identities that block the view.
Right. The concepts are like maps, but the actual path is internal. It's realization, not acquisition.
So living this means kind of constantly choosing, moment by moment. Choosing whether to identify with reality or get caught up in the illusion.
Seeing life itself as the teacher, yeah. And the article uses a very vivid analogy for this.
Right, the Matrix analogy.
Straight up compares the veils to the simulated reality of the Matrix, keeping people plugged in, unaware.
And the great discrimination is like taking the red pill. Choosing to see things as they are.
Even if it's challenging. And the article even floats this idea of a quiz.
Yeah, framed around the Matrix to sort of gauge how plugged in you might be based on how much you identify with the veils.
Like, it suggests questions that reveal this identification. For example, agreeing with a statement like, questioning the nature of reality inevitably leads to unhappiness.
Or maybe spiritual awakening is merely a form of self-delusion or escapism.
Or the world we perceive with our senses is objectively real and the only reality.
That's a big one. Another one the source suggests might be in such a quiz. If an idea fundamentally challenges my existing worldview, it's usually best to dismiss it outright.
Yeah, agreeing strongly with those sorts of statements, the article points to being pretty identified with the veils, resistant to looking deeper.
So connecting this back to the bigger picture, this whole framework suggests our daily experience isn't random.
No, our thoughts, feelings, beliefs, they're like signposts. They show us which principles, pillars, or veils we're currently aligned with, which raises a huge question, really.
It is.
How much of our experience is shaped by some objective, out-there reality, and how much is actually filtered or even constructed by these veils of perception within us?
That's a powerful thought. So this deep dive really offers a lens, doesn't it? A way to examine our own perceptions. The source presents this ultimate path as recognizing what we already are, that reality described by the pillars.
Yeah, it's less a quest, more an uncovering. It really highlights that constant interplay in life between that underlying unchanging reality and these temporary veils we get tangled up in.
And the whole journey, as the article lays it out, is about developing that ability to discriminate between them.
That's the core of the pathless path idea, isn't it?
Realizing the seeker and the sought were never actually separate. So maybe something for you to consider as you go about your day. Can you start to notice the difference between those parts of your experience that feel temporary, conditional anxiety, attachment, needing approval, and those moments or feelings that seem inherently unchanging, complete? Maybe a moment of peace, simple presence. What stands out to you?